How's Vegas reacting to these A's renderings?
Honestly, very quiet. Not a huge pop yet because it's just renderings, and we know the history with the Oakland A's. so,
Oh, they
uh,
they they lead the league in renderings.
yeah. So I mean, what Cisco what was that? That was what it was going to be called, Cisco Field in San Jose area, like 20 years ago almost
I've
now.
lost track of all the bullshit they tried to
Uh,
do over the years.
the Howard Terminal ones.
Yeah, with the gondolas. Yeah,
With
that
the
was going to happen.
you know what? I will say this: they have some consistency here between the Howard Terminal ones and these renderings. They're both designed by Bjark Ingels Group, big group. So
Hmm.
little carryover there. There's a little connection, but I don't know if that means anything.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up right now for everybody. So these are the renderings that were, God, I mean, it was a big deal to get these fucking renderings for whatever reason, because John Fisher didn't have them initially, and whatever the deal was. So now they finally have them, and this came out today. And to me, I mean, yeah, it looks amazing, but this looks like the Sydney Opera House. And yeah, it's going to be, I mean, God, this would be a dream come true for the A's to play in this kind of ballpark, but not in Las Vegas. And I don't know, this it's kind of gross. It looks really nice, but I don't see how that's actually going to happen. And maybe it will, maybe it won't, but there just seems to be a lot of shit going on with the A's of Vegas. Like when I saw you a couple of weeks ago when I was, covering the Super Bowl, we were doing Media Row. No one seemed excited about the A's going to Las Vegas. And everyone kind of seems more upset that they're taking over Tropicana, is it?
Yeah, the trop site.
Yeah. So I don't think that most people want the A's in Las Vegas to begin with. I mean, that looks beautiful and everything inside. It does look weird like the Sydney Opera House, but I'll believe it when I see it. There's so many things that need to happen. I mean, we don't even know if the A's are going to be playing baseball in Oakland while this shit's going to be figured out. Sacramento sounds like it's going to be the stopgap before they go to Vegas, but I don't know, man. It just seems like weird. It I don't know. It's weird because like I mean, you and I are used to watching the A's play in the Coliseum, and that's just what we grew up with our whole lives. So to see like a state of the art stadium for them
It's
would
weird.
be it'd be weird, but I mean it'd be nice for them. But then again, like they got to be good, or else no one's gonna go to this fucking thing.
And that's kind of what everything hinges on is. So let's just say they move here, right? That stadium gets built, or a version of that stadium gets built, state of the art. Okay.
Uh huh.
Does that all of a sudden mean that the ownership group is now going John Fisher and the owners are going to put money into the team? Like this only works one way, and the only way it works is if they actually have talent and then cultivate talent and then keep said talent and sign people to big contracts. Otherwise, you're going to end up being like what the Miami Marlins are.
Mm-hmm.
That stadium rendering, by the way, the glass part of it is very similar to what Miami has. You know, it's a big kind of glass open end kind of deal on one side. Um, so, but no one goes to Miami Marlins games. And if you're the A's and you're moving here, you don't want that to happen. You don't want to open that building up, have no one go to your games. And really, the whole point of having that stadium here then would be all right, let's fill it for the other 150 days a year with concerts and stuff, which it will fit a really good niche there for concerts because it's a level up from the arenas that we have here, but it's also a step down from Allegiant Stadium, which there's certain artists may be big, but they can't sell out a 68,000 person football stadium for a concert, unless you're
Yeah.
Taylor Swift or something like that.
No, we'll see. I mean, if you had to, I mean, what's your confidence level? You live in the area. You kind of get a sense of what's going on. Do you think this is actually going to happen with the A's in Las Vegas?
I think there's going to be a baseball team in Las Vegas, whether it's the A's or not. I would put right now at 60% yes, 40% no. So
Okay.
that's not very good though, because if you've already had the local government sign off on it, the state sign off on it, the governor, all that kind of stuff, and the league on board with it, and the external confidence level of people from the outside looking in is not at like a 90% or above, that's bad. That's just bad for optics. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I think it will happen, but that's my confidence reading on it at the moment.
Yeah, we shall see. Just your opinion, man. Alon Desai filling in for Stephen Langford tonight. Stephen wanted to go to a concert with Jesse, so I allowed him to do so. And yeah, I mean that's you're going to see a lot of Alon this year. Steven's getting married to
Woo.
Jesse, so I'm sure there's going to be things that pop up from time to time where he needs to take care of marriage stuff. So Alon's going to pop in, and we are more than happy to have him on because we could talk about, I mean, great timing with the renderings for the Las Vegas A's. I did see you a couple weeks ago when I was in Las Vegas. How has the city, I guess, recovered from the Super Bowl? And you, it's funny because while I was there, you and I were talking about if you think this is a big deal of how they're treating it. And you told me that it was much more of a big deal when the draft was in Las Vegas than the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was my feeling then. I still have that similar feeling. I did get to see more of it on the Saturday and Sunday of the game, so there was more, a lot more fan activity around, which I guess is what I was looking for. As far as during the week, like when we saw each other and hung out with everybody, it was much more of a corporate media kind of event. It was a lot of industry professionals. If you were in town during those times, you probably weren't a fan or a supporter. You're probably someone in working media like yourself, Derek, or someone who's corporate sponsorship activations, shit like that. So it was big, but it didn't have the same vibe, the same culture around it that the draft did. Now, maybe that's me nitpicking, but the draft is perfect for fans. It was perfect when the fans were here for the draft because the event's free, right? There's free events all over the strip for the draft. It's not like the Super Bowl, so it's much more accessible. There's people who, probably didn't go to a game all year who came to the draft and who go to drafts every year, right? Because the draft is a free event. But it was big. I just kept comparing it to kind of the culture up and down the strip that was going on for F1. And that was a lot more. I just thought there was more experiences, more kind of fan friendly things to do a day in and day out during the week leading up. And for the Super Bowl, it was very much like, here's this exclusive party that costs a ton of money to get into this night at this club. And here's this over here, private event, this, that. It was much more of that. But as far as an event goes, it was huge. It's just, I guess maybe I chose the wrong wording. The wording I probably should have said was accessible. It doesn't seem like it's a fan-friendly event anymore.
No, I would say, I mean, the way that they're pricing out fans and everything was very exclusive.
Yes.
I mean, for the most part, though, like I guess, like if you wanted to put down a bunch of money, you could go to the NFL Experience or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, you would know better than me. It does seem like the Super Bowl is just a way more corporate event, and that's just the way it is now. Like,
Yeah.
it's not. It's much more than the game. It is for companies. I mean, at Media Row, I was talking about with Steven, it was fun the first couple days, and then I got over it, and it was just so like, bleh, like it's just everyone's out there for themselves. Everyone's out there to promote some, product, or everyone's out there to promote their podcast or show, and it's all just kind of like too, just too media grossness to me. So that's what I see the Super Bowl as. Like it's just, I mean, I if you ask a lot of people though that were covering the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, they say that they loved it and it'll come back, and I'm sure it will.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's interesting that you say that the draft did well or better than the Super Bowl itself. That seems interesting to me. Then I wonder if they would bring the draft back, but definitely the Super Bowl will be there. And I don't know, maybe another. It's weird because like it's always like a 10-year process. Like Levi's got it when it just opened in 2014, and they got the Super Bowl in 2015, and it'll be back, I guess, in another few years. So it's a good solid 10 years since that's happened. So I don't know when Vegas will get it again. It would probably be in the rotation because it's a warm area. But yeah, I mean, most people said it was a success. But I think the NFL likes the corporate nature of it.
Yeah, no, there's no question that it was a success. It totally was. It generated so much economic impact for the city and for the NFL um, by its own self. But it's an industry event. You said it right there, Derek. It's an industry event, and then the actual event, the game, it's a television event. It's an event made for television. If you're lucky enough to have one of those 65,000 to 70,000 seats in the stadium, that's great. Like you get to see a Super Bowl, that's phenomenal. But otherwise, the whole thing is built around the television, and that's fine. That's just how it is. But I just think that in the future, and this is not just for when they have it in Las Vegas or when they go back to Santa Clara and San Francisco in the Bay Area or New Orleans, wherever it is, I think they could do more to make it more of a, and Vegas seemed like the perfect opportunity. New Orleans would be too, but make like an NFL village, make like the whole thing, which is kind of what they did for the draft. And I thought that was going to be the model for Super Bowl week. And maybe it's not because they know that everybody comes in on the Friday and then leaves on the Monday after. And maybe that's why they don't do that. Whereas the draft is off season and, people are coming and going.
Yeah. No, I mean, whatever they decide to do in the future, Vegas will be a part of the NFL, obviously, because they have the Raiders there. But I think more events will take place there.
Yeah.
But we got the off season, Alon, and I know you enjoy the off season as much as me. There's always intrigue and rumors and stuff like that. So I'm glad you're here because Steven's kind of a negative Nancy when it comes to the NFL offseason. Not really into it, but I force him to talk about it. But let's get into what happened today. Franchise tag deadline happened at 1 o'clock West Coast time. And the big names, I'll just read all the names off that were tagged today. L'Jarius Sneed for the Chiefs, Brian Burns for the Panthers, Justin Matabuke for the Ravens, Jalen Johnson for the Bears, T. Higgins for the Bengals, Michael Pittman for the Colts, Josh Allen, the linebacker for the Jaguars, Antoine Winfield for the Buccaneers, and Kyle Duggar for the Patriots. Any of those names surprise you that they were tagged today?
No, and I think the best maybe Winfield, maybe Antoine Winfield, the cornerback for the Buccaneers, but just because they don't seem like they're. I know that they have Baker in place, and it seems like they're back on the rise, but that's just a lot of money to dole out for a safety, especially when you probably still need more pieces to get back to that level you were at a few years ago with Tom Brady. But not really. None of them super surprising. I think my favorite of the taggings was definitely Matabuke. Not just from a production standpoint because he did great, but also because you're paying him on that D tackle rate on the franchise tag. So economically, it makes a lot of sense too for the Ravens to do that. But none of them were too surprising. I think the ones that were surprising were some of the guys who didn't get tagged. Like Xavier McKinney not getting tagged is kind of interesting. I think everybody assumed Saquon wasn't going to get tagged, but
Yeah, no running backs. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I'm assuming that the Raiders are going to be cool with him getting a bigger deal elsewhere because they're fine with Zaire White being the running back.
You talking about Josh Jacobs?
Yeah, what did I say? Josh Jacobs?
I had said Saquon, and you did, but I realized you were talking about Josh. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think you're right with Zamir White being able to take the load. I think Josh Jacobs will be back with the Raiders, but I'm not surprised that a running back didn't get tagged, a big name running back.
Yeah, I mean, with the way that market is now, I think that those guys. We may see it where a lot of guys just don't sign for a little while. Like it's a big running back free agency class, like with the likes of Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley and Tony Pollard. But and there's rumors that maybe the Browns are going to cut Nick Chubb just because they got by last year, made the playoffs without him around, but he just makes a lot of money, so they may cut him because of the way the market is. But I think that a lot of these guys are not going to be happy with what the market's going to be. They must have some detail of what it's going to be like now because this is I love that it's the tampering period come Monday and Tuesday of next week, but shit's already been tampered. Like the teams have already been talking to players. Like we already got like rumors about Kirk Cousins with the Falcons. So I think that running backs are going to take a little time to just figure out where they want to go because their market's not going to be great. But as far as the guys that were tagged, none of them surprised me. Just like you hear names all the time, like Jalen Johnson, I guess, was a guy that was in consideration for being traded at the deadline last year. The Niners, I think, were inquiring about him, but I know. I mean, like he's a good young corner, and I think the Bears want to keep him around. It's just funny how you hear guys going from possible trade candidates to being big time contract guys, and the biggest one that stands out to me is Brian Burns because if you remember a couple of years ago, the Rams offered 2 first round picks for him, and the David Tepper and the Panthers said, nope, we're not going to do that. He's going to be a long-time Panther here. We're going to lock him up with a contract, and it never came to fruition. So I don't know what they're doing, and I think they just tagged him because they don't want to just let him leave for nothing. I think it's the same thing with the Chiefs. They know they got to sign Chris Jones. L'Jarius Sneed is there. He was tagged, but it sounds like they're willing to trade him if they get the right compensation for it. Or he's cool playing on the tag, which I know not a lot of players are. And then there's T. Higgins. I think that's going to be more of a problem come training camp time where he's not given the right contract, and then you could see him possibly being traded. But I think a lot of these guys are guys that may not stay on the team. Like that's the interesting thing about free agency with the NFL is this is the only device that keeps a player from going to free agency. Like the team gets the opportunity to not lose a player. So as we saw a couple years ago with Devontae Adams, the Packers didn't want to let him leave for nothing. So they tagged him, and we all thought he was going to go back there on a new deal, and then the Raiders traded for him. So I think this is a smart move for a lot of teams. I agree with the most part of all these decisions. I just don't know if a lot of these players do not like. I mean, the majority of NFL players hate playing on the tag because then you got to go to free agency again, and you never know what's going to be offered after one more year of being on a contract. So I would say that we'll see what happens. I don't know if a lot of these guys will remain on their teams. I would look for L'Jarius Sneed to be dealt. Maybe I would look for Brian Burns to be possibly traded. T. Higgins too, if they can't get something done. Um, just because they got to. I mean, they're paying Joe Burrow a shit ton of money, and they got to pay Jamar Chase by next season. So a lot of interesting decisions that be made. But what do you think about the franchise tag? I always think about Alon, like when the Raiders did this. Like, remember when Al
Charles
chose
Woodson.
well, he would tag him every year, and you can't do
Yeah.
that anymore. You
No.
can't do it consecutive years. Like every year, Al Davis would tag Charles Woodson, and I don't blame Charles Woodson for being upset with that. But one of the ones that stand out to me is I remember when Al decided to tag Cameron Wembley over
Oh,
Zach Miller, and then Zach Miller left in free agency to go sign with the Seahawks.
yep.
And the story was that Al really wanted Zach, but he never had the proper communication because it was a 2011 training camp year going into the 2011 season. That's the year that Al died. And Al was basically on his deathbed, and he just could not get things done properly. So that's the one that always stands out to me. Was just like Al always weirdly prioritized other guys to tag than maybe the guy that was the necessary guy.
The guy that he should have tagged. No,
Yeah.
I agree with that. And, obviously in that situation, he could not operate those last couple of years the way that he was accustomed to operating, whether the team was doing well or not. But as far as the franchise tag goes, it's an instrument for owners, for teams to be able to keep talent without letting them, without getting nothing for that talent back, either be production, the opportunity to sign or renegotiate a different type of contract, or to trade. But it doesn't really leave the players any kind of recourse except for holding out and talking about how disgruntled they are. And when I say holding out, it's not exactly holding out for more money, because most teams that franchise tag you, for instance, like Jalen Johnson, he's getting franchise tagged by the Bears, but there's an expectation there that they're going to try to sign him to a long-term contract. They're using the tag as a placeholder in order to facilitate that.
Yes.
Okay. Josh Jacobs last year with the Raiders, there was no intention on the Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler camp, at least doesn't appear so, for them to get him a long-term contract done after tagging him. It was like, we're going to tag you, see how you do in this offense, and then we'll go from there. Right. Well, obviously, that's going to piss any player off. With a lot of the players who have been tagged, you mentioned Brian Burns. I mean, the guy's got darn near 50 career sacks now, but I mean, the Carolina Panthers need so much help that a guy like Brian Burns isn't helping them at this stage get to where they need to get. Looking at it in retrospect, hell, they should have taken the 2 first-round picks from Los Angeles, knowing that the shit show they're in now. Josh Allen of the Jaguars, I think, is a fascinating one because his production was off the charts. Right, he's a great player, but what do the Jaguars really have? What are they really building towards right now? So they franchise tag a guy like that. That would indicate to me that they're going to try to do everything in their power to keep him. because I don't think they just want to keep him for 1 year. But that being said, I could see him as a trade candidate because they need help, and his asking price has probably never been higher. You know what I'm saying? For a guy like that, Brian Burns has probably dropped. His has, but T. Higgins, I could see that guy going for some good draft capital if you needed to trade him. So I think the franchise tag it's an interesting device, as you put it. I said instrument, but it's team friendly, and it's basically a cover your ass device for teams to use. It's so you don't look like an idiot, and you can placate to your fans and your organization by saying, hey, we're trying here. We franchise tag the guy, and whether you're actually trying or not doesn't matter. The optics are that you are trying. But back to the list that was tagged, I'm not really surprised. I'm kind of surprised a little bit that the Patriots are even using the franchise tag this season. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because they need a total rebuild, and I don't know why you would want to automatically dole that much money out, but it is
on
what it
Kyle
is.
Duggar, who's a good player, but not a great player.
Yeah, on Duggar. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where it sits. I do think that 3 of these guys will be traded, 2 to
Which
3.
ones?
I think Brian Burns is a good trade candidate, especially if he heats up. I think Josh Allen could be, depending on exactly what the hell's going on in Jacksonville. Because we talked about stadium renderings earlier with the A's. I mean, it seems like every other month there's some type of renovation rendering, potential this, potential that for what Jacksonville has in Florida.
Okay.
So if they ever want to get to a point where they're spending buku bucks and their owner wants to do that, but it's Jacksonville. It's very hard to attract talent there. They have to keep drafting. But then again, you can't have situations like this with Josh Allen, a guy that you drafted, and now you're forced to franchise tag him because he might not want to stay there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these teams. Do you think these moves were made prior to when the Raiders traded away Khalil Mack? Because it seems to me more and more now that teams at the time when Khalil Mack was traded away by the Oakland Raiders to the Chicago Bears, it was just like, wow, this guy is so productive for you, but yet you're not going to grant him with a contract. And at the time, the Raiders just couldn't afford it,
No, they didn't have the money.
which was sad
It was a joke.
because, well, I mean, how many teams? Like I'll never forget John Gruden saying, "You really can't afford to pay the quarterback and the defensive player, man." And lots of teams do that now,
Yeah.
like because most teams have the equity to do that. The Raiders didn't at the time. But it feels to me more and more now like teams are comfortable with just being like, yeah, I mean, like, okay, this guy's great. Like Josh Allen had, I believe, 16 or 17 sacks last year, but our defense sucked. And we need to save this money for Trevor Lawrence. And we got to figure out what the hell we're doing with Calvin Ridley, which apparently, if they sign him back, I don't know if this is 100% true, but I did see that if they sign back Calvin Ridley, it's going to cost them a second round pick. And that's just the terminology in the contract when they traded for Calvin Ridley from the Falcons. They would have to give Atlanta a second round pick. But I don't know. Like to me, it's just like where do we go in the NFL where we don't reward the players that you draft with a contract? Like where do we go where it's not beneficial to us in the long run, even though these guys were productive for our team? Like I understand the Brian Burns thing, but that totally backfired on them.
Yeah.
To me, like, yeah, like it's tough because T. Higgins is going to garner a huge contract, but Jamar Chase is the better player. So, what are you going to do? It's the smart thing to tag them to get compensation for them, but also it's just like, wow, we were like, no one is safe in the NFL. Like once you draft a player, you get the best out of them for 4 to 5 years, but then if they're productive, then you really have to think about what's the best interest of your team if we can even hold on to them because of how much money they're going to make. Like it's just weird to me. Like even though I mean the salary cap has gone up this season to the biggest that anyone's ever seen, but still teams are going to have a hard time signing back players that they had drafted themselves.
So the salary cap increases have historically not kept up with the pace of where the contracts are going. And some would say, well, that's a good thing. That way you can't amass a super team, right? All right, I understand that. You want to keep parity within the league. That's why they keep things the way it is. That's why it's not baseball. But you have these issues like what you just mentioned where you're not rewarding the players that you drafted, your homegrown talent,
Hmm.
and you're not keeping them around. Now, the Josh Allen situation that we were talking about, their defense wasn't good. They need a whole lot of other help, and we don't really, Trevor Lawrence has he shown flashes? Of course he has, and everyone knows how talented he is, especially in college. But they need a lot of help. They need to get better as a football team, and right now Josh Allen isn't able to his himself there, even with all the production he had, 16 and a half sacks and the 30 plus quarterback hits is not helping them get to where they need to go. So it seems like these teams are in a crossroads with a lot of these guys that they either drafted or with their draft picks in general. It's almost like the guys on the first 5 years or a couple years, right? If they end up being really good,
Yeah.
slash the draft picks themselves before they're even cashed in and used to draft someone are almost being treated like, you know what? This is trade collateral. This is an asset that we're willing to go back and forth with. We don't really care. Part of that to me is the aggressive standpoint, like what the Rams did 4 or 5 years ago now, trading away all their draft picks to get people that they needed to build a team to get to the Super Bowl, really to get Matthew Stafford. Um, the other part of it is kind of the precedent the Raiders set that you brought up with Khalil Mack. And nowadays, that's a trade that most teams would probably make,
Yeah.
especially if they were in the same situation as the Raiders, record wise and talent wise, not talking about money. So, yeah, I mean, either the cap's going to have to increase so this kind of stuff doesn't happen, or increase more, that is, or teams are going to have to start saying, okay, well, we got to have a quarterback, right? So there's two scenarios for that. We're paying someone huge amounts of money because they're a veteran, or we have someone on a contract, a rookie contract, and then we dole out the money everywhere else. Otherwise,
Like the Niners did with Brock Purdy.
like the Niners are with Brock Purdy. That's one of
Yep.
the reasons that their window is still really good, because Brock Purdy is dirt cheap in a lot of ways.
It is, but they're also paying an
But
exorbitant money everywhere else.
they
And
they yeah, they're
currently they're 3 million over the cap. So while they are sitting pretty with not having to pay a quarterback, it sounds like from everybody that covers the Niners, and it was really started with Mike Silver's article, they're going to have to make a move on somebody. If they want to sign Brandon Ayuk, somebody's going to have to go this offseason. I don't know if they have the room to add anybody, but most likely they're going to have to subtract somebody.
oh, the guy to probably get rid of, even though he's a fan favorite, would be Kyle Juszczyk.
I think
Um,
that's. I mean, like you can. Kyle's great, but you
oh, he
can
is.
find another fullback.
Yeah, yeah, you can, and he's dynamic, and he's been good for them for a long time. But he's an expensive veteran. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of the stage it's at right now, where we're seeing players not get paid out or long term with the teams that they've been drafted by. They're getting slapped with a franchise tag, and then it's kind of a precursor to getting traded now. And
Yeah,
I don't know if that will change, because I don't ever foresee the salary cap increasing in such a substantial way from one season to the next, where it outpaces that growth of salary. So until that happens, probably going to continue to see this kind of stuff happen, especially with the lower tier teams,
yeah,
the teams who are not as competitive. Now, real quick, back to the franchise tag list. If there's one guy who's probably not that pissed about being on the franchise tag, even though he was granted permission to seek a trade, would be L'Jarius Sneed. And the only reason that is because winning a Super Bowl kind of cures everything. And he's like, well, what's the worst that could happen? I got to sit around here and maybe go for a third.
yeah. But I think also he wants to get paid. Like
He does.
I don't think he's gonna be quiet. I think eventually he'll say either you guys gonna pay me, or you're gonna trade me to another team where I can get paid. I
Yeah,
think that some guys get comfortable enough where you've won, and they're like, all right, now it's time for me to get
my money.
my generational wealth I can give to my family. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting there. I would assume that Jerry Sneed's going to get traded. But just lastly on the franchise tag, do you like this in football? Because this is the only sport that does this. In MLB and basketball, NBA, when you're a free agent, you get to choose if you're going to walk. And I know a lot of players are happy about that, to be in those leagues and to actually hit free agency. I do think that there should be a benefit to teams when you draft somebody that they can't just walk away. Like that's the whole point of why I drafted you, so you would be a franchise player for us. For you understand the opposite of that, where or the other side of the other view of that, where the player would be like, if you think I'm that great, then pay me.
Pay me.
But not everybody has the luxury to pay everybody. So I see both sides of it. I can understand why GMs and coaches and owners love the franchise tag, and I can also see why players hate it.
It helps keep the league at a more competitive balance, I feel like. We see in the NBA where some teams are perennial bottom feeders, although it's not happening as much as maybe it did in the at the turn of the century in the 2000s and even in the 2010s. But and a lot of that is due to the Warriors getting good. I mean, there's a
Yep.
perennial bottom feeder that kind of shifted the paradigm a little bit. But I I would rather see players be able to walk when they're in free agency and go make their money wherever they want to go. Do I understand both sides of it? I do. I do for sure. But um, I think some of these owners, and this is the real crappy part about it, I think some of these owners don't care. I think some of them are like, you know what? I drafted you, and I don't. Even though you're a great player for me, I don't want to pay you that much. I'd rather franchise tag you, make you be miserable, or just not pay you, let you walk, and then say, oh, we couldn't make a deal with the guy,
Right.
and just kind of use that old tired line of, oh, we tried, but we couldn't keep him. So I don't know. I think it cuts both ways for sure. I think the bottom line, though, is that some of this money needs to get reset one way or the other. The cap needs to go up, or the money that some of these quarterbacks make. And I'm not talking about the high end ones like Patrick Mahomes. Talking about the next tier and the tier below that probably needs to decrease.
I would agree. I think that a lot of money is dealt out to really average quarterbacks. Like that's what I felt when Derek got his deal, Derek Carr. That's what I felt when
Yep.
Jimmy got his deal. It was just like we're like, and when Jared Goff got his new deal with the Rams, I was like, good God, like not everybody needs to get like reset the market and be like the biggest the quarterback that makes the most money in all of football.
And the teams don't need to capitulate to it. I don't know if they'll ever figure it out that they don't have to, but you don't have to shell out a ton of money for a guy like Jared Goff, as talented and as much maybe more upside that he does have or unlocked potential that some
Right.
people think he has. But yeah, look what Jimmy Garoppolo was signed for, and he barely played. Look what
Yeah.
Derek Carr did in New Orleans this year, and it's like just because your new title is you're the franchise guy, which means you're probably there for the next 3 to 5 years, right? Oh, we don't
Mhm.
have a problem at quarterback because we just signed a franchise quarterback. Just because you have the word franchise in front of you doesn't mean you should earn $40+ million a season.
Yeah. And by the way, my buddy Andy comes in the chat here and says, "That's all fine and good, but what is your opinion on allowing dogs to play football in the NFL?" All right, Andy, we get it. You don't watch football. It's all good. All right.
Dogs could play, yeah. He's got that dog in him.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Airbud too, golden receiver or golden. What was it? Yeah, it was golden receiver. That was the name of the movie.
I knew he played basketball and I knew he played soccer. I didn't know he played football.
Oh yeah, in the sequel. Now, my favorite part of all those movies is when the coaches, like the opposing coaches, would be like, "There's no, hey, what are we doing here? You can't have a dog play football or basketball." And then the coach of Airbud's team would be like, "Hey, there's no rules there's no rules in the rule book that says we can't. I'm sure there are. I'm
It's
sure
not in the
there
rule book.
Yeah, and also like you can imagine like a dog catching a pass with his fucking teeth and the ball deflates, or some linebacker just crushes the shit out of a dog. It's like, Jesus, you heartless bastard.
Deflategate.
Exactly. All
Yeah.
right. See, Andy, I answered your question. Thank you for being in the chat and watching this thing. Um, all right, Alon. Speaking of quarterbacks that got paid, a quarterback 2 years ago got paid and got traded, and it was big. Russell Wilson. Me and Steven talked about it. It was one of the biggest trades of all time, honestly. Went for 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, 3 players, and a 5th-round pick, and he got paid. I think it was a 5-year contract for $245 million for the Denver Broncos. And it's no surprise. We knew this was going to happen. This time, a couple months ago, when the Broncos lost to the Patriots on Christmas Eve. Then Russell Wilson got benched for the last 2 games of the season, very similar to what happened with Derek Carr. And he is released. He is going to be released before the new league year on March 13th. And by doing so, the Broncos will eat the biggest dead cap hit of all time with 85 million,
It's
and Russell
horrendous.
Wilson gets to walk away with 39 million. And I don't feel sorry for Russell Wilson just because, I mean, he's got a Super Bowl, he's got a beautiful wife and kids, and he's made his money, and he wanted to kind of bitch his way out of Seattle. I thought so, like just whatever weird Dan Patrick interview he was doing at the time, and was like, I really don't want to trade, but my agent is going to put out a list of teams that I would love to go to if hypothetically I were to get traded. And so we did, and the Broncos fell for it, and they got, they were really planning on getting Aaron Rodgers because that's why they hired Nathaniel Hackett, and they didn't get him, so Russell Wilson was the backup plan. And I thought this move was going to be good for them. That was the offseason where the AFC West was wheeling and dealing. The Chiefs, didn't have to make as many moves because they were established and they already won the Super Bowl, but the Broncos made that move. The Chargers made the move to get Khalil Mack. The Raiders went all in to get Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones.
And
But
Josh
I th-
McDaniels as the coach, that
yes,
was their big move.
exactly. And I think that, but I think this was the biggest one. I think that Russell Wilson was brought in to be the biggest quarterback that the Broncos have had since Peyton Manning, and it just failed. It was not good. The whole thing of him, having his own office and thinking that he was bigger than the team, to him weirdly calling out plays that weren't in the Broncos playbook, that were, audibles in the Seattle Seahawks playbook, to him doing weird ass commercials for Subway and whatever. He wanted to be more than just a football player. He wanted to be a brand. And then Sean Payton came in and said, I'm not having any of that shit. So it was awful the first year. It improved with Sean Payton, but it was just clear that those two were not going to mesh. And I guess Sean Payton just wanted a job where he could have, ultimate power and not, you know, it, I mean, I think he really wanted the Chargers job to, go with Justin Herbert. But I think, at the end of the day, the whoever owns Walmart, that family, just like, here, Sean, take over the team. And now he gets final say on everything. So they'll be in the market for a quarterback. I wonder what they're going to do. They'll probably just kind of lay low this season, maybe draft somebody, but I think they will go with Jared Stidham or maybe Sam Darnold or somebody like that. But what do you think, Alon, as far as Russell Wilson's time with the Broncos? Do you think this was just an utter failure and he can rebound? And where do you see, like, I know you brought this up when you were on with me and Steven a couple of months ago when, he was getting benched and we knew this was going to happen. You actually think you think it's actually not a bad idea for the Raiders to have him as a stopgap quarterback. Do you still believe in that?
I think if that's the route the Raiders go, or any team that needs a stopgap quarterback, he would be a really good choice. Even with how horrible it was in Denver, I think this move. Trying to think of something, doesn't have to be in football. It could be in another. This is like, it's as bad, maybe worse, because Russell Wilson at one point was considered like an all-time great. I mean, we got to look back 10 years ago. There was Tom Brady, and Russell Wilson was like, before Patrick Mahomes, was the unstoppable guy. He was the guy that was like, we can't defend him. He's too mobile. He can make every deep throw. What do? He's very hard to stop. That shine has been taken off of him, especially the past 2 years with the Broncos. But it's like when Pablo Sandoval went to the Red Sox. I mean, that's how bad this contract is.
Yeah.
And they're eating it. And it was so bad that Denver's like, whatever, we're done. We'll eat the other $46 million or whatever it is to let you go walk. But I think anybody who needs a stopgap veteran, he'd be a good choice. I don't know if the mobility is still there anymore. I don't think it is. I mean, it's evident that he doesn't have that old ability that he maybe did in Seattle. But that doesn't mean he can't be serviceable and still make throws. But the problem is one of his most, dangerous abilities, why he was Danger Russ, was the fact that he could move. He can move
Yeah.
around and he can make the impromptu, kind of amazing improvisational play. And now it definitely didn't look like he could do that in Denver. So I don't really know what his value is. If you could sign him, let's just say for the Raiders, for instance, right? Even though I don't think they'll go this route, and I don't think they should. But if they do, try to sign him for the same amount of money that you did Jimmy Garoppolo, and you'll feel pretty good about yourself.
You think so? You mean
in
I
the
forget.
in that 20 million area, that 24-25 million area.
I mean, I think a lot of teams are going to be like, "You're making 39 million this year."
I think they're gonna. I think the same thing, Derek. I think teams are. You're making 39 million. We're gonna pay you the minimum or damn near close to it.
Because you got to prove it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a good idea for the Raiders to go after Russell Wilson. I think they need a young quarterback, and I don't like the idea of having a veteran plus Aiden O'Connell, and
plus
then having another quarterback like Aiden O'Connell's not the future to me, and neither is Russell Wilson. So I don't think you're solving any problems this season. I think
agree.
they need to find a young quarterback, and whether that's Justin Fields, which we'll get into, or trading up in the draft, I think that's the route they need to take. I don't think Russell Wilson is that much of an improvement over Jimmy Garoppolo. But as far as Russell Wilson, I mean, yeah, this is by far the biggest swing and a miss, I think, as far as a trade. To I mean, the amount of capital that was moved, 3 players and 5 draft picks.
Yeah, 5 picks that helped the Seahawks rebuild into being very, very competitive again without
Yes.
Russell Wilson, with Geno Smith at quarterback. Kind
Yeah.
of impressive.
No, I mean it was a great move done by John Schneider and Pete Carroll to be like. I mean, everyone thought that they were going to be terrible, and everyone thought that they were kind of the idiots. And I remember Pete Carroll after the trade being like, "Just trust us, okay? We know what we're doing." And he was right. I mean, I don't know what Russell Wilson exactly is as a quarterback. I think that he was very fun to watch and dynamic and kind of a freelancer, kind of a no, I should say freelancer, more of an improvisational quarterback where he was just good on his feet and knew what to do in certain situations and had the receivers that could help him. And he had a great defense and he had a running game with Marshawn Lynch. But then when you give him the reins of the offense to be like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady, it's not going to work out. And that's why I think that Nathaniel Hackett was just like, okay, you're Super Bowl winning quarterback, do your thing, Russ. And his thing is it's not the same like it used to be when he was younger. So
No.
he needs someone to really help him. And Sean Payton wasn't willing to do that. I think it's kind of lame of also, I mean, like, I think Sean Payton's a great coach, but I think also he just came into this job with thinking, I'm not going to get along with Russ, and he's not my quarterback. So he wanted his fingerprints over this with handpicking the guy that he wanted.
It's very similar to the John Gruden attitude of Tom's making too many demands. We're not getting Tom and Rob
Yes,
Gronkowski here in Las Vegas.
exactly.
It's the same thing. It's like, I got a Super Bowl ring. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it my way. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That being said, I wouldn't have been too enthused over Russell Wilson either coming to Denver after watching the year that he put on tape the year previous.
Yeah.
And then credit to Sean, he was like, all right, let's see what it looks like for 12 weeks. Whether he gave him a fair shake or not, it wasn't very good.
Yes. And
Even
yes,
even when they
AJ
went on that
Cruz.
little mini run.
Yes, AJ Cruz. I am saying that Russell Wilson is more of a system quarterback than Brock Purdy is. I would say that.
He had a cannon arm. He had an absolute
No, he was
howitzer,
good. I mean,
and he could move. It was a great quarterback when
but
he was in
it's
Seattle.
but it's something about Seattle that it was just easier for him, and then it was easier to translate for Geno Smith to take over. Like I'm not like it's not like they've had the same offensive coordinator. Like Russell Wilson had different guys. The best guy he had, I guess, was Darrell Bevell, who was his quarterback for the Super Bowl wins.
Yeah.
And then he had Shane Waldron and different guys. But it never was like, okay, this is the guy that's going to make Russell Wilson who he is in Seattle. They always changed. So I don't really. I mean, he is a part of the Seattle system, but I really don't know what the Seattle system is. There wasn't like a concrete system. So
Pete Carroll having guys go make plays and play hard. That was the Seattle
exactly.
system.
Exactly. So, but yeah, as far as like NFL history when it comes to trades, I mean, I don't think this even compares to Herschel Walker and what happened there. I mean, like I know that helped the Cowboys to win their dynasty, win the Super Bowls and everything. Herschel Walker still got the Vikings to the playoffs, and he was still a pretty good running back. You would never trade that much capital for a running back today. Like that's unheard of. But it benefited the Cowboys. But I still don't think that's like the worst trade of all time. People think about Eric Dickerson going to the Colts and him not being, the same player after that, or Ricky Williams with the Saints getting fleeced, trading with Washington to get all those draft picks to get Ricky Williams. That was a bad trade. But I think this, for the the how big of a star that Russell Wilson was, to go to a big franchise like the Denver Broncos, I think this is, I don't want to be prisoner of the moment or hyperbolic, but I think this is the worst trade of all time.
And the Broncos, under John Elway's leadership, thought that this was their second go around in the whole, like, well, we did this with Peyton Manning, now we can do it with Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. And I just want to emphasize, because I know there's 49er fans watching, you damn well know that Russell Wilson was a very, very, very talented quarterback when he was
No,
in Seattle. I know you do, Derek. Yeah.
Oh no, we were talking about today. He had a 17-4 record against them in his lifetime.
Yeah.
36 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions. I don't think I was talking about today with Adam Copeland. He remembers Kurt Warner being more of a thorn in the Niners' backside, but for my memory and my money, I would go with Russell Wilson being more of the antagonizer of the 49ers for a full decade.
He was a
Like,
killer.
yeah, like Kurt Warner did it for a little bit of time with the Rams and then came back with the Cardinals, but for a solid 10 years, whoever the coach was, whether it was Harbaugh or whether it was Kyle Shanahan, Russell Wilson would consistently kick the Niners' ass.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was every team that had to go against the Seattle team led by Russell Wilson, maybe with the exception of the last year and a half there, especially with like the first or second year of Metcalf being there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a nightmare. It was like, great. They're going to have like Lockett running down the sideline wide open, and then Metcalf eating up the middle of the field. And then Wilson's just going to run around back there and then launch a bomb. And it was horrible to go against for a lot of teams. So yeah, this is, for all those reasons, the fact that he was at one point a great player, that he was building a legacy, it seemed like, in Seattle, in terms of a like dynastic legacy, which the only reason it didn't happen is because Bill Belichick went there, and we're going to get in this situation. They're going to run this play here at the 1 yard line, and this is what you're going to do. And somehow that works. Even though, and they didn't hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. So without that, I mean, it's like, and everybody goes, oh, they could have won that. Not Russ's fault, right? It was a coaching decision, whatever.
Yeah.
But a great player, he goes to Denver, it blows up in their faces. I can't think of a worse trade in NFL history, and he's a fucking quarterback. It's not like you named all the other trades were running backs. I can't think of one that's a quarterback.
No, nothing like this. Like, I remember, quarterback trades. I mean, even if Aaron Rodgers is a pan out with the Jets, I don't think it's as bad as this.
Yeah.
Like, Aaron Rodgers may not be the same guy, but it's not the same capital. Like, this was huge. Like, they were expecting him to be the guy in Denver, and it wasn't even close to that. And I definitely think this is this. Yeah, I think it is the worst trade in NFL history. And I think, somewhere Pete's just kind of laughing, being like, I knew this was going to happen, because I think that Russ got too big for his britches, and he was calling the shots and wanted to be in the same vein as the other elite quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think Pete, just behind closed doors, was like, he's not that guy.
It's not
Like,
him.
I know what he is, and he's great for us. But if he thinks that he's, in the same upper echelon of like the Tom Brady's of the world, then he's wrong. So he was confident in making this trade. And I just think that they felt betrayed, where he was just like, you guys don't think I'm that good? You don't think I could have a say in the offense? You're not going to let me cook? Then I'm going to go, send a list to my agent, who's a baseball agent, and he's going to tell the whole league that these are the teams that I want to play for. And they're like, all right, if you're going to play this fucking game with us, then go. And we'll be fine without you. And it made the Seahawks look really smart, and it made Russell Wilson. I mean, this is the thing now. He is, how old is he? 35, 36?
Yeah, around that range.
Let me get the exact. But that's the thing now. He's got to repair his image, because he definitely, I mean, he's not looked at as the same guy. And I don't want to get into the whole Hall of Fame conversation, because I just do that when guys retire. And some people say, like, oh, his legacy took a hit with going to Denver. And I don't really know if that's going to, I mean, I don't know if that's the case or not, but 35, he's 35 years old. So now he's going to be a free agent, and he's in the mix with other guys that are going to be on the move this offseason, like Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields. Those are probably the big three names when it comes to quarterbacks this offseason. And I think it's not guaranteed that Russell Wilson will be a starter this upcoming season. I think that he should be. I think he's good enough to be a starter, but I think given what's happened this year or the last 2 years, I think that maybe some team brings him in with competition. So I do think the Steelers are a good option. Ernie Two brings up here what Russell Wilson to the Steelers. I do think that's probably on the table, and I think it's the same thing with Justin Fields. I think it's the same thing with Kirk Cousins. Now, the latest news is, I guess Mike Florio believes that Kirk Cousins is bailing for Atlanta.
Atlanta, yeah.
And the rumor is that he's been looking for houses in Atlanta. His wife's from Atlanta. And the Vikings have to eat like a big dead cap hit if he's not given a new deal before March 13th. And I guess Kirk Cousins is wondering how come they haven't gotten the deal done with me yet. As far as Justin Fields, uh, it sounds like every report is contradictory. Like this time last week, me and Steven were talking about at the combine. It sounds like Justin Fields, the big news is Justin Fields is going to get traded to Atlanta. And then there's a report that comes out that Atlanta has no interest in Justin Fields. There's another report that the Steelers are interested in Justin Fields. And there's another report that says that they're not interested in Justin Fields. There's another report that the Raiders are interested in Justin Fields. There's also another report that says that they're not interested in Justin Fields. So I don't know what to believe anymore. And I thought that a deal was going to get done this week. I don't know, because when Ryan Poles spoke last week, he was like, all indications are they're going to draft Caleb Williams. And he basically entertained most questions about Caleb Williams. And then when it came to Justin Fields, he said, we're going to do right by Justin. And if we are going to take a quarterback, number one, we do want to trade Justin before free agency starts. The thing is, I think they were planning on talking to Justin Fields before that was going to happen next week. And Justin Fields is calling his shots, man. He's not taking medicals, and he is telling the Bears, I'll speak to you guys in a couple weeks on my pro day on March 20th.
Caleb Williams, yeah.
Yeah, it's Caleb Williams. So with Caleb Williams doing that, I'm sure the Bears are like, well, fuck. Like we want to meet this guy and talk to him, and we do want to get his medicals before we make this deal. Now, they could just feel very comfortable with the whole thing and just want Caleb Williams to be their quarterback. That's what it sounds like. But do you really want to do that before? I mean, do you really want to do that and trade Justin Fields before you really know what you're getting into with Caleb Williams? And I think they have a good idea, but if you want to be 100%, maybe they wait. But then again, your market could shrink, because by this time in a couple weeks, I'm sure Kirk Cousins will already have a home, and maybe Russell Wilson will too.
I think so. First point, all the different conflicting reports that are coming out. To me,
it is fuckery season. It definitely is.
Oh, for sure. And
that's what we call it here on Just Your Opinion, man.
Yep, it's fuckery season. I've heard you and Steven use that phrase before, but in years past, the thing is, this is to me, it smells like it's being drummed up from the Bears, and of course it is, right? They want to get maximum value for Justin Fields. So why would all these stories be coming out, and then with the conflicting reports, trying to juice his value up somehow artificially? Because everyone knows, whether it's Caleb Williams or not, even though it looks like it's going to be Caleb, that the Bears are going to draft a quarterback right now as everything sits. So it doesn't matter who that quarterback is that they draft. The fact is, everyone now thinks they're going to draft a quarterback. So that being said, they've never been at a worse leverage position than they are now with trying to get rid of Justin Fields. What are you going to give to a team that has a guy who has his own issues in terms of trying to get the most production out of him when they're not hurting for a quarterback because they're going to draft one? So it's very hard for them to get any kind of significant value out of Fields. To me, if I was a team trying to trade for Justin Fields, I would give no more than a third-round pick. And I would tell the Bears, I'd say, go F yourselves. I'm not giving you a second. And a third, maybe a third, because I know you're going to draft a quarterback.
Yes.
So this is the world that you're living in, Chicago, and that's just what you have to deal with. As far as Kirk Cousins goes, it looks like he's going to Atlanta with some of those reports, but we don't know. It could always change. But let's say he does. I think that's very interesting for the NFC South, because you have the three cast-off quarterbacks and then the one young new one in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Assuming that Baker Mayfield signs back with the Bucks.
Yeah, assuming Baker Mayfield stays with the Bucks, which I think they'd be foolish not to, because that kind of takes care of a problem for them, and they
Yeah.
can,
I mean,
stay competitive.
they already locked up Mike Evans with the 2-year, $52 million deal, so I'm assuming they want Baker Mayfield back.
Yeah, they want Baker back. So you have Baker, Cousins, and Carr. The three. They're pretty good, but they're not really that good, guys.
Middle tier quarterbacks.
Middle tier quarterbacks who at times can play really well in that division. But so you got those reports with Justin Fields. Caleb Williams, on the other hand, I hope this doesn't become a precedent. It's one thing for quarterbacks not to throw at the combine, right? Especially guys who think they're going higher up. They go, I'll throw up my pro day with guys that I'm comfortable with at a facility that I like, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't bother me at all. But to not do any of the medicals and then to come back and say, well, I'll do medicals for the team that's going to draft me or the teams that are serious about me. And those are the ones I'll get my medical, they'll get what they need out of me and they'll be able to talk to me then. I mean, that's out of left field. And then I don't know whether this is actually his character or him trying to do some type of damage control or something, being like, yeah, I'm staying at the end of the combine and shaking everyone's hand at the end of the quarterback's day. I'm staying after all the drills are over to show that I'm that guy and I'm cheering everybody on. So I didn't, because you heard that he did that too, right, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the tweets where everybody's like, Caleb Williams is the last guy here at the combine, which I was like, oh, yeah, good for him, man. First guy there, last one to leave. But then I'm like, well, he's not doing anything.
Not doing anything, yeah. So what was he doing?
So like he's like definitely just like going up to like, Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah and be like, great broadcast, guys. Like
Yeah.
I think that it was kind of a media tour for him just to go to the combine. He didn't talk to any teams, it sounds like. So he just wanted to show face and make it seem like, he's not going to be a problem child. He's got the charisma. I don't blame him for having no agent. His parents are leading the charge there, so he can, he knows that he's the first overall pick, so he doesn't need to do a lot. The medical stuff is interesting. I guess, when you do that, you give your medicals to all 32 teams. So, and given what's happened in the past, with whatever's gone on with CJ Stroud or other quarterbacks that have had their reputation tarnished by something leaking out or some team like twisting it. I mean, at the end of the day, all these guys go off to have they're yes, they are questioned before the draft, but it's all up to them once they actually get drafted, and maybe money is taken away from them. But I think with Caleb Williams, he just doesn't want to leave anything to chance. So I have no issue with the medical stuff. I do wonder why he's telling the Bears, you're going to have to wait on me to meet with me on my pro day. If you really want to be the guy and you don't want to have to deal with any more of this headache of are they keeping Justin Fields? Are they taking you? I would have met with them already. So just get this done with, and then you can move on, and then that you're the face of the franchise. We all expected with more than a month away from the draft. So it's not the norm, but then again, Justin Fields is not, or not Justin Fields. Caleb Williams is not the norm when it comes to a quarterback prospect. The potential is off the charts. He may be the best prospect we've seen since Andrew Luck, but there is a character component of it that I think a lot of people are questioning. But as far as the veterans, the guys that are in the league, how would you rank it right now, Alon, with the guys that probably will be available? Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, 1, 2, 3. How would you rank it?
I think Kirk Cousins is number one.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Because his play has been pretty consistent, even though he is older and has injury problem now. I'd say Justin Fields is 2, and that's because he's younger and there's potential that's untapped, and maybe didn't have the best of situations with the Bears, even though they had a pretty damn good rushing attack. They're passing attack. I mean, he's never passed for over 3,000 yards in a season.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And how the mighty have fallen. Russell Wilson is the odd man out. He's the last one on the list because of how poor his showing in Denver was. Real quick, back to the Caleb Williams thing. I just had one more point. He's not your everyday normal prospect either coming into the draft. The man lives in a beautiful penthouse in Los Angeles. He's getting paid well for being the quarterback at USC through NIL and all that stuff. And yeah, he don't want to leave anything up to chance. So I don't blame him. One question I had for you, Derek, about him do you think any of this reeks of maybe this sounds like a guy who maybe wants to get drafted very high and wants to be the first pick, but doesn't want to get drafted by Chicago?
No, I think that if at this point he would have already voiced that he doesn't want to go to the Bears. I think that he does want to go to the Bears. I think he's cool with it. I think it's a big market for him to go to. But you just nailed it, Alon, that he already has established himself. He's in
Yeah.
commercials. He's in the Dr. Pepper ads and Wendy's. So he lives on the West Coast. He played in LA. He knows what it's like to be a star already. So to him it's like, all right, I mean, you're on my time, Bears. Like you want
Yeah.
me? Like you're picking me over a guy you just drafted. So you must think I'm the shit. So yeah, I mean, I'm calling the shots right now, but this act has to go away quickly because by training camp, the likes of DJ Moore and Montez Sweat will be like, "You're not shit now, dude. You got to prove yourself to us."
Yeah, once you're in the league, you're screwed when it comes to that kind of bullshit because everybody else, even with the league changing over time, it's not as bad as it was with rookie hazing and things like that, and guys being as mean to you, especially if you're a quarterback. But
Right?
still, they're not going to let him get away with that kind of
No,
bullshit.
no,
And
they'll make
his coaches won't. They'll run him out of town.
no, they'll make fun of him. He'll get tons of shit for being an established guy before he even got to the Bears. But as far as the quarterbacks, I would agree with you, Alon. I think it's one Kirk Cousins for what he's accomplished in this league, and I'm not too concerned with the Achilles. I think that he wasn't the biggest mobile quarterback to begin with, so I don't think that's going to hurt him. As long as he just can stay in the pocket and pass, he'll be fine. But the league has changed. You do need more dynamic playmakers when it comes to quarterbacks. So he's on borrowed time. He whatever team he goes to, if he stays with the Vikings or if he goes to the Falcons, it will be probably a 3-year contract or less. Justin Fields, I would put number two, but I'm not really that confident in him. And then Russell Wilson needs to repair himself. I thought he had a fine season last year. It's close 2-3 between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. But the teams that are brought up the most are the Falcons, the Steelers, and the Raiders. And if Kirk Cousins does leave the Vikings, then that's another door open for a team that needs a quarterback. And I'm surprised. I thought maybe this would be maybe a possibility because I have seen the Vikings do deals with the Lions, like they traded for TJ Hawkinson went from the Lions to the Vikings. The Vikings and Lions did a deal in the draft where Jamison Williams went to the Lions, and that was the Viking spot. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings were willing to deal with the Bears for Justin Fields if Kirk Cousins were to leave. But that's rare when you trade a quarterback in your own division. The only times I've heard of that happening are Drew Bledsoe being traded from the Patriots to the Bills and
To the
Jonathan
Bills.
McNabb being traded from the Redskins to the Eagles. So yeah, the Raiders are right in the mix of the quarterback situation going on in the fuckery, and those are the three big names. Along with you could throw Ryan Tannehill in there, but I'm assuming he's gonna be a backup for
He,
somebody this offseason.
he's a backup now,
Yeah,
and it's hey, he's had a heck of a career. I can't get mad at him for the career he's had. I mean, it's been fine. There's been nothing wrong with it, but his best shot of doing anything real significant was in Tennessee, and that window's closed. So I don't think there's too many teams that are like Tannehill's our guy. I mean, your situation has to be pretty bad. It would him being a starter would be like when Mariota a couple years ago had to be the starter for Atlanta.
right. The one spot that I thought of was Pittsburgh because Arthur Smith is there, and he knows him from Tennessee. But it sounds like the more any I don't know what to believe anymore because like we said, this is the fuckery, and there's so many stupid Dove Kleinman sites out there.
Does he even report news anymore?
He just, I mean, it's not even news. He just aggregates it. He just steals from other people. The one that's interesting, though, I'm not going to totally knock this site, even though they do post a lot of bullshit. You ever seen NFL notifications on Twitter?
No.
They they actually report news, but I don't know how credible they are. Sometimes they're actually spot on, and sometimes they're not. But they keep saying that the Steelers are not content on letting Kenny Pickett be the quarterback next year, and they
I
want to
would
upgrade.
Yeah. I would tend to believe that, Derek, just because I thought when Kenny Pickett got drafted, I thought it was a bad draft pick. And I wasn't alone. There were a lot of people who thought that. I don't know why they drafted him, regardless of whether the fact they needed a quarterback. Do you think they're going to ride it out with him on his rookie contract?
I thought initially they were, but the more I'm reading rumors and whatnot, I tend to believe that maybe they are looking to upgrade, and maybe they're going to do the Zach Wilson thing with Kenny Pickett. That maybe, I mean, as we read it today, last week I thought the Justin Fields was going to the Falcons. Now I don't think anymore. I think that with what they have, like Zach Robinson, the quarterback coach for the Rams, is now their offensive coordinator, and he had Matthew Stafford as quarterback. I don't think they want Justin Fields and having a running quarterback. I think they want a traditional veteran, a guy in the pocket, a drop back and throw guy. And with the talent that they have, I think they could be a good team with Kirk Cousins. So as we sit here today, I think the Steelers are more inclined to go with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson and potentially have it be a quarterback battle with Kenny Pickett. But then where does that leave the Raiders? So the latest is the Athletic reports, and I'm not sure if this was a Vic Tafer report or not, but it just says the Athletic. The Athletic's reporting that the Raiders are trying to move up in the draft to go from 13 to either 5 to 7. And that's interesting because that would mean that they're not in the top 3 spots, which is where you would assume Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May are going to go. And it's assumed right now that 1, 2, 3, Chicago, Washington, New England will take those 3 guys. But who knows? There's also, I mean, I told Steven last time, like maybe the Raiders quarterback is not even on the roster right now. Rich Eisen, who, I respect, does a good job on his show. He came back and did his top 5 combine stories that he heard from the combine. Rumors. He heard that Trey Lance is definitely in the mix to be the Vikings quarterback, which would be interesting with the Cowboys trading for him a year ago. And I always thought the Vikings were going to go get Trey Lance and he'd be the next guy after Kirk Cousins left. I always thought Kirk Cousins was going to leave this season. But because they won so many games last year, that they're
Yeah.
not in the luxury of, getting the quarterback that they wanted. So I always thought they're going to re-sign him this offseason, but it doesn't seem like that's the case right now. So, but things change. There's also this is as we said, the fuckery. There's so many smoke screens thrown out there right now that I don't know what to believe. But yeah, the Raiders at from 5 to 7. That one means that would put them in the, I guess, the Bo Nix category or the JJ.
Penix, yeah, Penix, Nix, McCarthy area.
Okay, well I'll ask you this. Did you watch some of the combine this past weekend?
Oh yeah, I watched it. I
Okay.
watched it.
Which quarterback do you think really improved his stock from the ones that threw? Michael Penix, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy.
The most Bo Nix.
Why do you say that?
Because Bo Nix, in my opinion, had a red flag regarding his arm strength,
Okay.
and he relies a lot on his athletic ability, and Oregon runs a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage, right? So it was important for him to show that he was able to fire the ball with authority on intermediate to deep in breaking routes, and I thought he did a good job on that. Penix did what Penix does. I mean, if football was played on air, like 7-on-7 a game, Penix would be an incredible prospect, right? Because he can just sling it. McCarthy started out a little shaky on his throwing drills, but how much stock do you put into that? Who
Yeah.
knows? He was fine. He did. McCarthy's biggest drawback is that he comes from a situation where they didn't throw the rock around a lot. I think their leading receiver last year had 700 yards on the season. So, I still think Bo Nix increased his draft stock out of that pool of 3. I think he increased his the most.
Do you think all 3 of those guys could be first round picks?
I think 2 for sure are, and I think 1 will go late. And I think the one that could go late would be JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, that's the guy that I really don't know about. Like I watched him obviously in the national championship game, and I watched him in Big Ten championship and beating Ohio State this year. I really got to watch him more because I'm surprised that he's talked about as a first round pick. Because when I saw him when Michigan was, not doing well offensively in the national championship game, I was like, this guy's not it. This guy can't throw the ball down the field.
No.
And Michigan was a power running football team. They were really, they were a running football team. The best player on their team was Blake Corum.
It was Blake Corum.
As far as being on the offense. I didn't think JJ McCarthy made them an amazing offensive, air raid team, which to me, if you're going to be like, you got to see that in college. Like if you're going to the next level, like, I don't know, JJ McCarthy never really showed that at college. He could be that guy, but I just didn't see it. I always, like, when I'm watching the national championship game, I texted you and I was like, this guy's a backup. I don't see it. So I need to watch more of him. I definitely need to watch more of Bo Nix. I was impressed with Michael Penix. I've seen him play a lot, and he was very impressive in the playoff game against Texas. But there are the injury issues, and he did have a lot of talent around him. There's the Washington Husky receivers and the offensive line, and when he played Michigan, he looked lost. So I still need to know more about these guys, but I don't know if the Raiders should take any of those guys, to be honest. And it's very early. I don't know if I would be comfortable with any of those guys. I know Antonio Pierce really wants Jaden Daniels because he knows him from ASU, but I also don't think they're going to have the opportunity to do that because it sounds like Jaden Daniels is going to be the second quarterback taken in this draft. We'll see. But yeah, to me, just back to what I was talking about. As far as Rich Eisen's rumors, yeah, he said that Trey Lance could be an option for the Vikings. The big one that I was surprised by was that the Giants are totally done with Daniel Jones.
I don't get that because I don't. He lost his job to injury this year.
But he wasn't playing well prior to it.
He wasn't playing well prior to it, but that's a guy that they have. Maybe they're just done trying with him. I mean, that could be the case too. But he seems like everyone thinks, and I used to think this too. This guy can be a good quarterback, cut cliff quarterback. He can come in. It's can maybe take him a few years, and he's never had it. He makes big mistakes every season, it seems like. And then now with the injuries, that compounds things. And maybe they're just at the point where it's like, this ain't gonna work. And maybe the farthest we could ever get with him is a first round playoff.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Daniel Jones is good, but not great. But it's always interesting when you have a offensive play caller that inherits a quarterback that he did not draft.
Yeah.
And I remember the first game that the Giants played against the Titans with Brian Dable as their head coach, and Brian Dable chewed Daniel Jones out, like on the sideline. I remember him throwing a bad pick in the end zone, and he was like, "The fuck you doing?" So I wouldn't be surprised if they're moving on from Daniel Jones. Um, and that would be another quarterback that's a part of the carousel for this offseason that maybe the Raiders could be in on. Who knows? I wouldn't feel great about Daniel Jones being the Raiders quarterback, but we'll see. So, Alon, what do you think is the best option for the Raiders? Because you have moving up in the draft, which will cost them, some picks and or maybe players even. Um, for a team that's trying to win now, but also are still kind of rebuilding and kind of building themselves up. I don't think that's the best thing to do, is to trade away more picks. But then again, they're a young team. Maybe they can afford that. Is it trading for Justin Fields that has Luke Getsy as his offensive coordinator that he knew in Chicago, or is it signing a Russell Wilson that needs to repair his image and did have the Raiders listed as one of his teams that he would like to play for? So, what do you think is the best option?
I think Russell Wilson is the ultimate backup option. That's the option that if nothing else works, you can do that and you go, God, I hope this works. And if it does, it's great. And if it doesn't, you're in the same situation you are now. But if it was me, if I was running the show, so this is what I think the primary should be, what their plan A should be. I'd trade the farm to try to get in those first 3 picks. And really, I would trade the farm to try because you're not getting Caleb Williams because he's going number 1, right? So
Yeah.
I would trade my first and second round picks through the year of 2027 or 2026 for sure for the first rounders to get up and get Jaden Daniels. I would even trade up in the draft and then trade more assets to move further up the draft to do that same thing.
Okay.
Which would be, I mean, you're talking about, like you said, the farm. You're giving up everything. You're mortgaging the next 8 years of the franchise for one player. But I think that's the situation they're in. And we'll see what Tom Telesco and ultimately what Mark Davis thinks. If Mark Davis thinks Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce are his men and he thinks that they can get the job done, he will give them the green light. He will tell them to do that. But that's what I would do. because to me, there's really no point in making your primary option signing a Cousins or a Wilson or a guy like that. I don't think that's a winning long-term move. It's not a long-term move, and it's not a I don't think it's a huge earth-shattering, this could be great move either. I think maybe you could be okay or good even, but I don't think that really moves the needle and does anything for you. I think what they need is a quarterback. The second option there, besides the Russell Wilson thing, is if they think that a guy like, and there's a lot of ifs here, if a guy like Michael Penix or Bo Nix, if Bo Nix, he has the mobility, if they think he's good enough throwing the ball downfield, which I personally don't think he is, but if they think he is, they could go get him, or they could get Michael Penix, who can make every throw, even though he missed quite a few during the championship game against Michigan. But the problem with Penix is you better have a rock solid O line. And guess what? The Raiders have O line questions. They need a guard. They need a right tackle. Really, they might kick Parham in to center. That's fine because Andre James probably not going to be around. But really, the only solidified guy they have there happens to be a good one is Colton Miller. But if you draft a guy like Penix, you need that offensive line to be just amazing. You need them to be Iron Men because his biggest asset he had great receivers, obviously, in college at Washington, but that O line kept him upright and he was able to put up massive numbers. But if it
Yeah.
was me, I'd trade everything to try to move up and get a guy like Jaden Daniels. That's what I would do.
Well, I think that's a big reason why they hired Tom Telesco because I think that they want to do this. I think that Russell Wilson does you no good. I think that they don't think that Justin Fields is going to be the guy that separates them from the Chiefs. Like that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
They got to find the next guy that's going to kick Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert's ass.
They
Like
know they have the defense. They know they have the defense to be competitive.
and they have the coach that thinks that he has the blueprint on Mahomes.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, real quick, what'd you think about that?
The Mahomes rules?
Yeah,
It didn't bother me. Some people were very offended, and some people, oh, this is so bad. And I'm like, come on, give me a break.
I didn't think it was. Okay, I'll say this: it wasn't normal coach speak, and I can understand why the players gravitate towards him because he's not backing down from anybody. But at the same time, you got to back that up now.
Oh yeah, that's bulletin board material, dude.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was gonna say real quick, one other move they could make. And
Okay.
this would help them a lot because you brought up the Chiefs. Go get Jones.
Chris Jones.
Go get Chris Jones.
That would be huge.
That's a massive difference maker right there. If you get Chris Jones, that means you're not getting a veteran quarterback, and that means you got to go draft someone.
Well, that's part of the problem too. Is if they make moves in free agency, which they have the money to do, but they're not addressing the quarterback situation until the draft, then you're kind of just banking on we're going to get somebody. But if you don't, then you're just running it back with Aiden O'Connell. And to me, most teams are going to get the stopgap guy. So whether that's like Jacoby Brissett or Gardner Minshew or maybe even Ryan Tannehill, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like you're not going to go in with three quarterbacks.
No.
Like the point of this whole thing is Aiden O'Connell is supposed to be your backup quarterback, and you have the difference maker as the number one guy. So it may just be that the Raiders make a shit ton of moves and they're banking on trading up in the draft, and they may have to do it sooner than later. I think there's a part of the organization that is pissed off that Josh McDaniels did not bite the bullet and did not trade up for CJ Stroud when that was on the table. I think they want to do that this year. I think they would love to have Jaden Daniels because of his familiarity with Antonio Pierce, but I don't think the Commanders are just going to let that happen. So their best bet may be I don't know if they're trading with the Chargers at 5, but maybe they trade with the Giants at 6. But then again, maybe the Giants want to take a quarterback because they're out on Daniel Jones. This is going to be very interesting. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think the best spot or the best option for the Raiders is to draft somebody, and you're going to have to trade up to do it.
Yeah.
I thought last year it was a lot easier because I don't remember what their draft position was, but the Cardinals were 3, and the Cardinals
The Raiders were 7. The Raiders were 7. They drafted Tyree Wilson.
Okay, to go from 7 to 3 is not that big of a jump. It is, but it isn't. Compared to going from 13 to 5, that's bigger. So they had the capability of doing it last year, and they just didn't do it. And maybe Josh McDaniels just didn't like any of these quarterbacks. But yeah, I think they have to do that this year. But I don't know where and when and who. Like I think it's gonna be very tough to get any of those top three guys. Like I think those guys are difference makers. I don't know about Bo Nix or Michael Penix or JJ McCarthy. So and I don't even know if you have to trade up to get those guys. I think you could be. I think you're comfortable just being at 13 and one of those guys just falling to you.
I know for Bo Nix, McCarthy, and Penix, I think two of them for sure will be there. Now you might have someone like the Giants take someone, right? But otherwise, I think two of those guys will be there. I don't know which two they are.
Yeah.
I'll just throw out. I think it would be Penix and McCarthy would be the ones that are there.
Okay.
Penix, unfortunately, because of his injury status, and McCarthy because I mean he didn't light it up in college. But yeah, it's going to take a lot to trade up. No, you're exactly right, Derek. It's extremely difficult to trade up 8 spots, let alone 11 if they want to get into that top 2 to try to get a guy like Jaden Daniels. But I think that's what they're working on right now in Henderson. I think that they're gonna. I would not be surprised if we see them trade away 6 or 7 picks this year's and then future picks for that spot to draft who they want to draft.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think that it's not just a simple, okay, well, Kirk Cousins went to the Falcons, Justin Fields went to the Steelers, the Raiders will get, whoever the best available quarterback is. They may have to wait. It may just be like, a lot of pulling your hair for a couple of weeks for Raider fans to be like, okay, we don't know who our quarterback's going to be, and they're going to have to wait till the draft. I wouldn't be surprised if they do the aggressive move that Kyle Shanahan and Kyle did a couple years ago to go get Trey Lance or whoever they were thinking about at that time. Still don't know if it was Trey Lance, but it may be that they have to make this move sooner than later, so at least they can tell the fan base or the coaches that this is we do have a plan at quarterback. Like this is what we're doing. We are moving up to go get somebody. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think that they need to go get Russell Wilson. I don't think that's going to help them. Justin Fields is interesting just because of Luke Getsy. But then again, I don't know if those guys want to work together again. I think that the best option is to plan for the future and get that guy that you think is going to beat Mahomes and Herbert. You need to find that guy. So I think they're all in on that. It's just a matter of who. And it's not as easy as it was a year ago. I thought it was 10 times easier to go trade up with the Arizona Cardinals, given that no one was trading for Kyler Murray. He was on the ACL tear, and that could have been done. And then the Texans beat you to it to go up to get, Will Anderson. So we shall see. But I think the best option for the Raiders is to go draft a quarterback. And we'll see about these other quarterbacks. I think that Russell Wilson's best spot would probably be the Steelers. I think so.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say that earlier. I think the Steelers actually works for Russell Wilson on a number of levels. They have a great head coach. They consistently have good defense, and he's proven that he can make that kind of situation work.
And I think, honestly, the best spot for Justin Fields, maybe Minnesota. But I don't know if the Bears are going to be willing to trade him in the division like that.
It could come to a point though, Derek, where it doesn't matter whether they're willing or not. They just might need to get rid of him. You know what I'm saying? That no one else really comes with a great offer or anything. And Minnesota's like, look, here's a 3rd round pick for him.
I mean, that's the thing is, what if at the end of the day, Minnesota's like, we're offering you a 2nd round pick for him, and this is the best option you got on the table. We don't care that we're in the same division as you. Take the value.
Yeah.
And I think you had an interesting point where, yes, the Bears do have some leverage in the case where they don't have to trade him, but also most of the league knows that they're not sticking with him. So at this point, like it's kind of like 2 years ago where Baker Mayfield was on the Browns when Deshaun Watson was already there, and most teams were like, we already know you're getting rid of him, so what's the point?
Yeah, what's the point?
Like these are the options. Either you cut him or we're offering you like a 6th round pick for him. And I forget what he went for Carolina, but it's kind of the same situation where I'm sure the Steelers are calling the Bears and like, hey, we know what you're doing here. You're not going you're not going into the season with both guys. So here's the offer. Take it or leave it. Um, so yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Like we'll see if he gets traded this week. I think I was pretty sure that was gonna happen, but now I'm not so sure, given that Caleb Williams has kind of put things on hold. So we'll see about that. As far
Real
as
oh,
yeah,
sorry. One more
yeah,
question about the draft, Eric, to
yeah,
you.
yeah, go for it.
Do you think we see a lot of the pick swapping before draft day even happens this year? Do you think we'll see that? For instance, do you foresee the Raiders moving up before draft day?
Yes, if they're in the market to get the quarterback, they got to do it before draft day.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Not many moves were done last year, if I remember correctly, for quarterbacks while the draft was going on. I think, and most of the time it's not. Like I remember when the Rams traded up to go get Jared Goff, it was weeks before the draft, and the Eagles did the same thing. Same thing with when Washington moved up with St. Louis, I believe, to go to number 2 to draft Robert Griffin.
RG3. Yep.
Yeah. So I think in order for them to move up, yeah, they're gonna have to do it before the draft. Speaking of the draft and combine, just some takeaways. What do you think about you're very familiar with college football. So what do you think of Xavier Worthy having a what was it, a 4.21 40 time?
Yeah.
And I mean, we all know that Al Davis would have loved this back in the day, speed. I watched him play at Texas. There's a lot of Darius Hayward Bay traits with him, but he does have the speed, and I think that was pretty impressive what he did.
He has sprinter speed for sure. And it's funny you bring up DHB kind of traits because he can make some really difficult catches, but it's some of the simple stuff, just running a simple route kind of stuff that isn't all quite there. And you have a lot of freedom in Sark's offense to kind of do what you want. So the fact that it didn't always translate at Texas is interesting. But anytime these guys, I mean, I'm not spoiled about it. Anytime some of these guys run like faster than a 4.4, my breath's taken away. I'm like, oh my God, that guy is blazing. But to run damn near 4 seconds, I mean, you're 2/10 of a second off of 4 second 40. It's insane. I don't speed's amazing. I mean, look what Jamison Williams was able to do for Detroit because of his speed this year.
Yep.
So someone's probably looking at him going, I can do something with that. He could be our JMO. He could be our Tyreek Hill. He can be
Yep.
our guy who does something like that. So I kind of wonder how much you can actually move up these days in the draft with a good 40 time because everyone scours film so much and there's all the analytics now where it's like, well, the 40 is the 40, but this is how fast they are in game speed. And it's like, okay, but I think a good 40 time can still do wonders for your draft stock.
It can, but also I do wonder if some scouts and general managers are hesitant because GMs don't fall for the same stuff that scouts do,
That's true. That's
and
true.
and and and, co- and coaches really don't. So, like John Ross, he definitely got drafted in the first round because he was fast.
Yep.
Don Terry Poe had an excellent combine. He went in the first round because he had a great combine, and he did the 40 time well. He did the bench press well, but he didn't pan out. I wonder if more teams are going to be hesitant just because a guy's fast doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be a good player.
So, okay, so here's an example because you brought up Dontari Poe. Here's an example outside of Worthy. So let's talk about. You watched all 3 or 4 days of the combine, Derek.
No, to be honest, I watched the quarterbacks throw and I watched Xavier Worthy run his 40 time, but that's about it.
So you didn't see any of the defense. You didn't see like Tavondre Sweat or any of those. Okay,
I know I know Devondre Sweat, big boy, but no.
he was incredible to watch a
Oh,
guy like
I
him.
watched him. I watched him catch a touchdown pass this year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course, Longhorns. But who was the guy? Braden Fisk, who's a defensive lineman. He's an interior defensive lineman for Florida State. He he was running circles around everybody. Every drill he did perfectly. He excelled at his I don't remember his 40 time, but it was below 4.75. I
yeah,
mean, he was freaking fast for a D tackle. He's got short arms, whatever. But I watched him and I went, okay, this guy has the athletic ability to be a freaking problem in the NFL. That
yeah.
being said, it's a short arm D tackle. It might not work out very well at the next level when those guys can get their paws on you. But do you think at the wide receiver position, I still think speed is paramount, right? Do you think
Absolutely.
do you think at the other positions, linebacker is very important now these days as well. But do you think at some of the other positions like D tackle, like how important do you think it is the running back 40 time? I don't know. I don't know anymore.
I would say for running back, yeah. And for defensive linemen, yes, they got to move to get to the quarterback. Offensive linemen, I always wonder why they need to run the 40.
They should run 10.
Yeah, like
I know they
or,
time the
or
split.
whatever or whatever they can manage or whatever, if they can if they can run alongside Rich Eisen and make themselves feel better about themselves, then yeah, they should do that. But I think that yeah, I do wonder why. I'm like a lot of people question the combine now. Like, why do people watch this shit? Because I don't know. Because we're fucking obsessed with football. So let's watch it.
Yeah.
Um, but even I'm not that crazy about the combine. Um, and a lot of people are questioning, like, should they still do the same stuff? Half the coaches don't come anymore. That's all really blown out of proportion. Yes, it's a big media day thing, but also scouts use it to their benefit. So I do wonder a lot of things, but I think at the end of the day, it does measure how a lot of these kids are looked at in coaches and GM's eyes. But also, pro days are big, and at the end of the day, no one really knows how these guys are actually going to play. It's
Yeah.
all just based on a lot of like I don't give a shit about Wonderlic tests or any of that stuff. But when it comes to like I would love for Caleb Williams to throw, but he doesn't need to. Same thing with Drake May and Jaden Daniels. They've already got their spot pretty solidified, so they don't need to prove themselves anymore. Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, and Michael Penix do. And Rockin' New Era asked us earlier, what QB do you guys think will slide in the draft? That's hard to say. I really don't know right now, and I really don't know. I got to watch these guys play. It could be Penix. That's what I've heard the most, and I wonder why. Because out of all three of the other guys, the second tier as far as quarterbacks, Penix, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, he seems like he has the most potential. But for whatever reason, I guess the injury stuff and the fact that he benefits from a big cast is why a lot of scouts are kind of down on him.
Do you think it's considered a slide? Like a slide for me for him would be, and that's a really good question by the way. But do you think it's a slide if he still gets drafted in the first round, but it's late in the first round? Because I don't for him. I think the only if he didn't have injury, he'd be a top 3 guy like the rest of
You
these
think
guys.
so? Yeah.
Yeah, just because the stats are so good.
How many injuries did he suffer? So he tore an ACL and
He's
two
had
torn ACLs.
he's had 2 leg injuries, I believe.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's not great.
No.
But
I don't know if they were both ACL, but he has the ACL, and I think he had I don't know if it was his ankle or another ACL, but I believe he had 2 pretty significant leg injuries.
yeah, I mean, I know that's going to make a lot of people, weary about him. But I think also, I don't know if it's two ACLs. I got to double check that. But
He's had
I,
four season-ending injuries during his first
yeah,
4 seasons of college football.
yeah, from
Ouch.
Indiana to Washington.
Yep.
But did he suffer any of them recently?
In 2023, let's see. 2020 he had his ACL tear, and then in 2021 he had another injury. I'm not sure what it was.
Okay,
But
so both of those were prior to him coming to Washington.
here we go, Derek. Acromyoclavicular. Okay, so his shoulder. He had an acromyoclavicular joint separation in his throwing shoulder in 2021, which ended his season. But
Okay, well, that happened.
since then he hasn't had any injuries.
Okay, but that was okay. That could happen to any quarterback. And the leg injury, he just tore his ACL.
Yes.
I think those are freak injuries, to be completely honest.
I think they are too, but everybody's going to hold him against him.
Well, we'll see. I'll watch more tape on him, and I'll have my own opinion. But yeah, I think that, I mean, he might be the diamond in the rough of this draft, Michael Penix. And Bo Nix could be that guy too. I don't know about JJ McCarthy, but people are saying that he's a first round talent. So I guess I need to watch it more.
Pedigree.
Real quick, just to answer another question from Michael Michael Penix from Rockin' New Era. Do you guys think certain teams look at pro athletes' kids more, kind of like Curry, Clay, CMC, where they grew up around the league? Oh, definitely, I do. I think that helps. I think that kids that are kind of grounded, or hopefully grounded, when they have fathers that played in the league, I think that helps a big deal. Yeah.
That's another good question from Rockin' too, because this combine, this draft is going to feature a lot of
Second
legacy,
gener- yeah, second generation.
second and maybe even third generation players. So like I know
Jerry Rice's son, Frank Gore's son.
Chris Jenkins, whose father played in the NFL for the
Oh, Chris
Car-
Jenkins.
Carolina Panthers.
Oh wow.
So there's a lot of different connections. I think it's important, and
Well, look at all the DBs. Patrick Surtain,
yeah, look at the
second.
DBs.
Who else am I thinking about? Patrick Surtain. Who's in? Oh, Asante Samuel Jr.
Oh, Sante Jr. Yep.
J.C. Horn, who's Joe Horn's son.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of guys. There's probably one more that I'm not even thinking about.
But yeah, so I think it's important for sure. And we're seeing that more.
Oh yeah, and Christian McCaffrey's brother. I think Jacob McCaffrey is his name.
CMC's brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're seeing this a lot more in the NFL now. We've already seen it in other sports as well. And yeah, it's a good thing for teams because they know that the pedigree's good. They can look, it's not like you're basing everything off of the father or the parents, but at the same time, it's like, hey, this kid's been around like pro football his whole life. That's a very, very good thing to have.
Yeah.
Real quick, as far as quarterback sliding goes, I think there's a chance that you could see, and this is as a result of all the hype around him. I do think there is a chance you could see Jaden Daniels slip a few spots, even though I shouldn't say slip, just drop out of the top 3 overall picks in the draft
because of his skinny frame.
Because of his frame and some of the way that he runs a little bit. I don't agree with this opinion, but sometimes he does put himself at risk when he runs. I think he got knocked out of the Alabama game. So I think there's a small chance that he'll still go top 5, but there's a chance that him or May don't go in that top 3 picks.
Okay.
Just because I think there's always a chance where something gets shaken up somehow.
Well, one thing is for damn sure when it comes to the draft, they better put Nick Saban as part of the coverage.
So if they have Nick Saban as part of the coverage, I would love that. But does that mean I also get to have David? Oh, but Nick Saban's with ESPN. F my life. And Shaw goes and works with
NFL Network.
NFL Network.
Yeah.
Damn it. If only you could get both those guys next to each other talking about. I would love to listen to that.
No, I mean that'd be great, but yeah, David Shaw will be on NFL Network, and yeah, I mean I think ESPN has no choice but to put Nick Saban on the draft coverage.
Nick Saban has no choice but to be on the draft
coverage.
Oh yeah,
he'll kill it. Speaking of Alabama, the best name in the draft, hands down, Kool-Aid. What's his last name?
McKinstry.
McKinstry.
Very good.
Defensive back. Combine, I guess, helped him out, even though maybe his stock will fall a little bit. But he did get the medical, and I guess they found that he had a broken foot that never properly healed. But you don't think that's going to hurt him greatly?
I don't think so. I mean, unless something turns into some like major Liz Frank recurring injury, which
right.
Let's hope that's not what it is. But otherwise, I mean, the guy's shown that he can play in college at a high level and get a good combine. He's a good player. I don't think that him and Terry and Arnold, whoever gets those guys, they're going to have some rock solid day one plug and play kind of, third or second cornerback on the roster already, or number 1 if you're really bad.
Kool-Aid McKinstry, just a credible name. Not as cool as the coldest
or
the coldest Crawford. I actually don't know what happened to him. He played for like Southern Louisiana or something. I forget.
Do you guys remember the running back for Kentucky a few years ago? Cavassier Smoke. That was a name.
That's a fucking name. That's actually a fantastic name. Before we get out of here, you wanted to bring up the Warriors. And good timing because we got great news today. Andrew Wiggins is coming back after how many games did he miss? Wherever it was, he had to deal with a very serious family issue, kind of like what happened last year, but obviously not the same amount of games. He missed 22 games last year. I think it was 3 or 4, whatever it was this time. But he's back today, and it went from originally Shams being like he's en route, coming back to the Bay Area, and then Kendra Andrews like, nope, he's here. He's at practice, and he practiced, and Steve Kerr just said he's playing. He's playing tomorrow. And Andrew Wiggins talked to the media, didn't give details about what happened, but it's good to have Andrew Wiggins back with the team. And I think that no injuries to report. This is the first time that the Warriors are fully healthy since the start of the season. I'm very surprised given Steph Curry's knee injury that was going to make him questionable for the Celtic game, but he ended up playing. And I think it helped. I honestly think it helped, even though it was a terrible game. I think
Yeah.
it helped having the blowout loss to the Celtics, and they rested him for most of that game. I think they need to go back home, which that will be tomorrow against the Bucks, and they need to focus and they need to be humbled as they were on national TV, and they need to come back out and play better on national TV. And I think that it's clear to me that the Warriors are a good team, but they're not a great team right now. I think that when they play the likes of the Denver Nuggets, who in my opinion are the best in the West, but they're currently losing to the Phoenix Suns right now, which is actually a pretty good game right now. I think when they play the Nuggets, and I think when they play the Celtics, the best in both conferences, they're going to lose because I don't think the Warriors are as good as those teams right now. But I think that they could give a fight to the Bucks tomorrow. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks beat them because I think the Warriors, like I said, are a good team. They're not a great team right now, and they're a play-in team or better. But that's as far as I see them going. Like either a six seed, the six seeds the ceiling, 10 seeds the bottom. So I like that they're getting Andrew Wiggins back. I like that Curry's fully healthy. I like that Klay Thompson's bought in. Don't love that Draymond Green's talking a shit ton these days, but whatever. He's a new man. He went to therapy and he's all good now. But I think that we have to be realistic about the expectations for this team this season.
I think things need to be tempered a little bit because it was a great month of February. February was phenomenal for the Warriors. Would they win 11 or 12 games that month? And Steve Kerr got his eighth Coach of the Month for the Western Conference or whatnot. But yeah, that 52-point loss is just kind of flushed that away. Fun fact: I think that's their worst loss since 2020 2021 against the Toronto Raptors, where they lost by 53. So that was pretty bad.
Yep.
But that was a bad season too, I believe. Um, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, the injury report being empty for the first time since November, really, that's phenomenal. I tend to agree with you, Derek. I think they're gonna naturally fit into that sixth, seventh seed area, unless something catastrophic happens above them and they just keep going on a great run. But they needed a I don't want to say they needed to get their asses kicked, but there needed to be a reset. And it's good that the reset came on the road and then they can go back home and they can play another premier, a primetime game against the Bucks, which should be big for them, and they can get up and get ready for it. But I like a lot what I see from this team. I like the way that everybody's embraced their role. Speaking to you, mostly Clay Thompson. I like the production they've been able to get out of Kaminga. I like the way that Steve Kerr kind of felt like the boat was kind of burning for a while, especially in December and parts of January, and how he's been able to really manage things well and kind of stabilize everything. I do think that they can be competitive against the Nuggets. The problem is making those last few key stops or going on an offensive run themselves at the end of a game against the Nuggets and actually clinching things. That's going to be difficult. Also, they have no answer for any premier big man in the league. That's another big issue. They don't have anything to contend with a guy like Nikola Jokic.
No.
I don't know how they deal with him. That being said, I think this team is destined to go to the playoffs. And depending on how the seeding shakes out, I'd rather not see them in a play-in game, obviously, just because everything's up in the air when you're in those later seeds. But I think there's a chance that we see them in the second round, and then anything could happen with their championship pedigree that they have.
That being said, do you think there's a chance that they could upset one of the more inexperienced teams that are at top of the West right now? Say a Thunder, say a Minnesota. I still think that the likes of a veteran squad like the Clippers and obviously the Nuggets would beat them. But let's say that the Timberwolves or the Thunder hold on to the top two spots. And let's say the Warriors sneak in as, they win a playing game and they are the seventh seed or the eighth seed. Do you like their chances based on just not based on their talent, but based on their playoff pedigree?
I do, because I think the Thunder and the T Wolves are having great seasons, and good for them. They've needed them, but I think that the pedigree that the Warriors have, there's just too much championship mentality and metal on that team to go out to a team that's very inexperienced at that level. I think their biggest issues in the West that they could potentially run into will be in the two teams that you previously mentioned, the Nuggets and the Clippers. The Clippers have good players everywhere you look, and the Nuggets are trying to become champions again. So I just would say this to everybody: the Warriors aren't that far removed from winning a championship a couple of years ago.
Yep.
The problem is that the roster is significantly different. Now, the guy that I think they really need to make an impact here down the stretch, they need Klay Thompson to find more consistency, and they need Chris Paul to be Chris Paul. And if that happens, I think they're in very good shape.
We shall see. And I think they're playing very good basketball prior to the beat down in Beantown. They played very well against the Knicks. They played very well against the Raptors. But yeah, that last one is the lasting image in our mind. So we'll see how they play against the Bucks tomorrow night, and we'll see how they finish the rest of the season. And that's all I got for tonight. Alon, anything else you want to bring up?
No, that's it. That's all I can think of at this rate. We got through a lot, man. That was a lot.
We did, and just when Ernie, our opiner of the year, gets in, Ernie, where the hell were you, man?
Ernie,
Just
we
getting home.
working overtime.
Yeah, I know, but now he wins this award. He thinks he can just come in anytime when he wants. We may have to rescind this award, Ernie. I don't know about this. I don't know if I like this.
Ernie, Derek's gonna have homework for you. You're gonna have to break down Bo Nix and Michael Penix's game film
Yeah,
as well as JJ McCarthy.
give me all the notes, Ernie. No, I'm kidding. We love you, Ernie. There's a reason why you won the award. Well, thank you, Alon, for filling in, man. We really appreciate you doing this. Steven, we'll be back on Saturday. But like I said, Alon will be filling in a lot more because Steven's got a big year ahead of him getting married. And a lot
Steven's getting married.
exactly. So we will have Alon fill in a lot more if you're willing to do that, my friend.
Yeah, and obviously, hopefully, I have some good news for everybody next time I'm on because got a iron in the fire, and yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
It's a very interesting one that I do hope Alon gets because it would be very interesting for this show, and let's just say it would be fun. It'd be really fun if you got this job. But we'll hold that off until next time. Steven will be back on Saturday. We're gonna come back on Saturday. Um, and we're going to be doing our fuckery preview. We'll be going through who we think is, options for the Raiders and options for the 49ers when it comes to free agency, who are trade candidates. We'll be talking about Justin Fields if he's traded at the time. And we wanted to bring in somebody that knows the Chicago Bears quarterback situation pretty well. So, for the first time in a long time, we're going to have a guest on the show. Steven and I will be joined by Matt Kolsky. Matt Kolsky will be joining us this Saturday.
It's a great guest.
Look forward to that, talking Bears football with him, quarterback situation. Until then, thanks to everybody in the chat tonight. AJ Cruz, Ernie 2, and Ernie 1 finally showing up. Lazy. Alon, thanks to you, man. Thank you for filling in at the drop of the hat anytime that we need you. Really appreciate it, man. And on that note, say what you always say, my friend.
It's just your opinion, man.
There you go.